Welcome to episode 6 of the Community Hour. I'm your host, Blake, from the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas. Today we've got special guests from around the world, or mainly in the US, but that's okay. Rocky Mountain High, all the way to the West Coast. We've got Sean, we've got Jason, we've got Jillian with Zapier, where everything's happier. Mary at Capsule, Jason at Gremlin, Sean at Skyflow. If I said that twice or out of the order, it is 7 a.m. here, just waking up. Got the coffee going. We are going to get into community hour. Quick four things today. One of the things that would be interesting to talk about: what is your big secret weapon as a business or a community professional? My big secret weapon is listening, right? It's not going in with 30 questions to ask a community member in a 15-minute meeting, just going in to listen to community members, not ask. Getting them on, letting them talk, understanding what they need, hearing it in their words, right? What's working, what's not working, what are they trying to do? Listen is such a great underused secret power. Secondly, got to hang out with Bill Johnson, the godfather of community content creation, over the weekend here in Las Vegas at the Peppermill, this amazing neon breakfast place. So amazing to be back in person talking to community professionals. That was just absolutely great. Be sure to check out their podcast. Forget the exact name, put a link to that into the chat. Third, Pedro, or Mr. Nobody, just put out this awesome DAOs, this super long blog post on DAOs and DAOs leadership. So if you're into Web3 stuff, I'll put a link to that. That's probably the coolest thing I've seen in community this week. And last but not least, I just joined UFC Fit Gym, where I can start working out. I have not had a good workout since pre-pandemic. So this whole week I've just been like this with sore muscles. I could barely move or walk. So I'm just typing kind of basically some sort of piano player, things like that. But that's really it for me. So I would just say, if you're working out for the first time, go easy. Don't be like me. Don't be because you're going to be paid for a really long time. But up to the stage first, let's bring in Zapier, where everything's happier. Miss Jillian, I'm not even sure to say the last name, but we'll get you up to the stage. How's it going?
It's good. No one can say my last name. It's okay. So it's Betlick. Whole bunch of silent letters. Nothing looks the way it's supposed to. So it happens.
Yeah, and then just kind of we were talking. So I think I said Zapier a million different ways. So it's Zapier, where everything is happier.
Yeah, so we actually have t-shirts at work that say Zapier makes you happier. And it works because people literally say Zapier, Zapier, all sorts of things. So we always kind of get a kick out of how people pronounce the company name. But yeah, Zapier makes you happier. Best way to remember it.
Awesome. There you go. Zapier, where everything makes you happier. So we've got Jillian B joining us live today from the car. So awesome in this world that we can meet and connect. Who would have thought years ago? It's one day I'm going to be on this show live from my car talking to the entire world. But I guess that happens. And while we have you on here today, what's your kind of career journey been like? Did you kind of look as a kid, one day I'll be doing some community stuff, I'll be at Zapier where everything's happier? Or are you like a lot of us that are just became accidental community professionals?
Total accidental. I grew up thinking I was going to be a marine biologist, um, but I'm from a family of engineers. Ended up going to school for engineering. Landed myself at Autodesk, actually. So you're talking about Bill Johnston. I was there. He was there twice. I was in there. I was there before he came back, and kind of accidentally ended up in community. I was actually working on their engineering software. Noticed that the community kind of was being a little unloved at that point because it was kind of in a weird, wild, wild west middle state. Made a fuss. They handed me the keys, and I didn't even know what community was. I knew how to do support. I knew how to talk to people. Didn't realize talking to 3 million people was actually a career. So that was pretty cool.
Nice. And then, so now you're at Zapier. What kind of led you there, and kind of what is kind of your role and your kind of team look like there?
Yeah, so I mean, in between Autodesk and Zapier, there was, various companies. I worked for the Community Roundtable for a while. I worked for a defense contractor where I ran a giant internal community that was trying to avoid classified data. And eventually got to the point where I really wanted to go back to working with customers in an external support community. Came across Zapier actually as a customer, then noticed that they were hiring a director of community, and I was like, oh, tell me more. So that was pretty cool. I've been there for a little over a year now. My job actually morphed from being just the director of community to now being in front of community, user documentation, and user education. So I basically handle, if you can Google it and find it, there's a good chance that someone on my team has actually touched it.
Nice. And so for a lot of us, it's like Zapier is like a critical part of our lives, like connecting apps, being able to integrate them. It was such a painful, like abstract layer of like your tech stack is this giant Frankenstein. You got homegrown tools, and then you collect all this debt, and then you start buying all these tools, and then you're like, dude, how are we going to measure all these different tools? How are we going to integrate all this stuff? And you kind of solve it. So that's got to be like a for me, I was just thinking in your role, you probably see some amazing like integrations and like ways that customers are using it that most of us had never even thought of.
Oh my gosh, just like some of the things people come to us with are amazing. And I gotta say, being in the community space is so cool because that's what we do. Like we actually, our community exists for basically two purposes. One is to support our customers in a customer support capacity, so troubleshooting, how do I, things like that. The other is people coming to us and saying, I have this thing I want to do, and I don't even know what tools I want to use, or maybe I have one puzzle piece, but I don't know the other three. How do I go from point A to Z? And that is awesome. Like, we love those questions. We get about 20 of them a day, actually, which is pretty cool. And so we really get an amazing opportunity to just kind of go absolutely nuts coming up with amazing solutions and pulling inspiration from other people. So that is a very cool community purpose.
Nice. And then, do you have any like one or two just like amazing, mind blowing, or heartfelt like community stories so far since you've been working there?
I mean, I think probably some of the big things is like we just will have people come in that when you think about automation and no code, you tend to think of a bunch of like tech bros who are like super, super savvy. They're, automating their NFTs and stuff like that. The reality is that automation is for everyone. And we've had a few situations where we've had teachers and nonprofits, moms, parents, guardians, people like that come into our community and be like, I need help with this thing that seems really insignificant, like to the point where they're apologizing for it. And we are so stoked to see those types of interactions. Like we want to make automation for everyone. So when I see those are my favorite. Sometimes we can't help them as much as we'd like to because maybe they're using a tool that we don't integrate with. But really seeing that spark, like getting them to start thinking about pseudocode and start thinking about the logic of the steps and thinking about what tools they can put into their lifestyle to make their life easier and to make automation just a thing. Um, that is my favorite. I love those situations.
And then for like community professionals specifically, so looking at Zapier, like what are like the ones that are kind of coming in green? Is there like one or two things you generally always recommend? So if you're coming in to use us, here are like one or two things to keep in mind. And here's like one or two like really good use cases for community professionals because I know you're probably struggling with like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so what we always tell people is think of something that you do multiple times a day, multiple times a week, whatever it is. And think about that first. So don't try solving for something that you're not doing yet. Start with something that you're already doing. Um, for community professionals, we find oftentimes it's actually around communication and task management are the two things that we struggle with the most because we're wearing all the hats, we're doing all the things. And so, we really encourage community professionals figure out your task management. Let's figure out how to automate some of those messages you have to send out. Even if your platform doesn't integrate with Zapier, there's still a lot of stuff you can do. So we really love kind of helping people think through those really repetitive tasks um, and come up with innovative ways to make sure they don't ever have to do that again.
Nice. And is there any like one or two like just kind of really true like North Star companies or communities that you've seen that are really using kind of like the leading edge of using Zapier?
It's funny you asked that. No, not really. We're looking at starting up a user group specifically for community professionals, because we find more often than not we'll be hanging out in, like the CMX Slack, the community club Slack, and people will see Zapier behind our names and they're like, "Hey, can you help me figure out how to even get started? What can I do?" We've actually had a lot of interesting conversations with vendors about, "Hey, build a Zapier integration. Like it's a really, really great way to get your customers more involved, and build a lot of brand loyalty. So no, we actually don't really have any amazing stories yet, but ask me again in a year and I'm sure we'll have a lot of stuff.
Nice. And one of the questions kind of hit at the start of it, start to round this up. Well, we really flew by. So, as a community professional, business professional, do you have a secret superpower? And if so, what is it?
I would say it's around data. So if you give me a giant, scary looking CSV file and say, tell me what's going on, come up with some actionable intel, I will gladly do that. I love data, and I'm really good at wading through raw numbers and all of that chaos to kind of come up with some sense. So that's definitely my secret superpower.
Yeah, it's weird. I've been on like some of these like community calls and meetups, and people are just like talking through all these initiatives, and I'm like, well, how are you measuring that? And it's like
Yep.
crickets, and you're like, oh no, it's like data is your friend. It's okay to like measure things and know if they're successful and just little things
Yep.
like that. So definitely, that's a great one to have. And then one of the CMEX came out with the industry report, and it basically said everybody's struggling with engagement. So then, coming from you and the experience you have, is there like one or two like engagement tips for people either like struggling to get engagement or just getting started, wanting to like not get it back, but to build it?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing that I see, newer community managers do or newer communities do that doesn't work is you have to go in thinking about your customer first. Don't even think about what you want. Don't think about what your organization wants. Start with what your member, what your customer, what your audience wants. If you can build engagement techniques specifically around what they want, you will eventually be able to meet in the middle and get what you both want. But I see more often than not people jump in and they just, they go with questions or techniques that the customer really has no interest in. You really have got to start with the customer first. Be customer centric, and your engagement will be great.
Great, amazing. And then we're just to wrap it up. We flew by here with 10 fast minutes. Got three lightning round questions for you, kind of rapid fire. So make it easy. Lightning round question one. You are involved with the mountain biking ladies. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is the largest women's only mountain biking group on Facebook. We have just shy of 30,000 women from around the world. I am kind of the co-lead for the group, and it is complete and utter chaos. You wouldn't believe how much moderation you have to do for 30,000 international women. It's a great group though, and I love it.
Wow, sounds amazing. I love mountain biking. I think I always end up flying off my bike, but that's probably more for me than anything else. You really have to watch where you're going. And then you love to read. So question two: what's the last book that you read and really, 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 really loved?
The last book that I read that I really, really loved was The Huntress by Kate Quinn. I'm obsessed with historical fiction and Kate Quinn books. Uh, that book needs to be a movie. It needs to be a movie. And until it can be a movie, listen to it on Audible because the narrator just like she brings it to life so, so good. Like I've now read it and listened to the Audible and I need a movie,
Wow, or be on Netflix, Hulu, or
please.
Paramount Plus, or something for sure. And then for last lightning round question before we let you go today, what has been like your favorite or most memorable community moment to date across your career?
I'd say probably years ago when I was at Autodesk, I've been working on this ambassador program, and we made it to the annual conference. And we had built such amazing relationships with these new ambassadors that every time I try to walk down a hall, someone was yelling my name and running at me to give me a hug. And it was so cool to see that, digital community turn into an in real life community. So that is by far one of my favorite moments. Trying to figure out how to like recreate that in every community I'm in.
Oh, that's amazing. And then just really amazing to have you on today. I know you got a lot of things going on this Thursday. Any final thoughts for or anything else exciting coming up with Zapier? I know you mentioned like you're doing like a creating a group, but anything to take us out? Any final thoughts?
I would say, just everyone come check out what we're doing at Zapier. Lots of great stuff. If y'all ever want to talk anything community, I'm always around, happy to chat. But thank you so much for having me on this today. This was awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to all your social stuff so people can find you. Put a link to Zapier in there. So Zapier, where you're always happier. If you're doubting how to say it, just rhymes with happier. Happier. I can say that with some coffee. So that's great. So thank you so much, Jillian, for being here and great success wishing to you at Zapier, the mountain biking ladies. And anytime you have a good book, be sure to let us all know because that Huntress one sounds amazing.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. See ya. All right. Up next, a legend, a mortal, a Spartan, a Skyflow, an API, an integration. One of the coolest people over here in hashtag West Coast Life, Mr. Sean Falconer from Skyflow. So let me get you up here, Sean. People don't want to see me big. Sean, how's it
With the
going?
intro.
How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
All right. So you are kind of into this world of developer, community, all that kind of great stuff. So kind of what does your kind of career journey kind of look like? When you were young, what are those things that you're looking to do and how does that compare where you've landed today?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people that have found careers in community or developer relations, I kind of, fell into it, but in a lot of ways I've been doing it kind of my entire career. So I've kind of been all over the place in a lot of ways with my career. I studied computer science for about a decade. I did 3 degrees and a postdoc. And originally I kind of thought I wanted to be like a professor or a professional researcher. But when I was a postdoc student in bioinformatics at Stanford University, I realized that I felt like I was kind of missing out on applying my technical skills to creating things that actually impact people's lives. In a lot of ways, like research felt kind of abstract, and I actually liked building things that people would actually use rather than creating a research paper that maybe 6 people in the world cared about. So during my postdoc, I ended up starting a company, and I left Stanford after a year after we had raised seed money to focus on that full time. And then I ran that company as the technical co-founder for about 7 years. And then once the company got to cash flow positive, I was, kind of ready for something new. And I ended up stepping away from the business, staying on as a consultant for a year. And then we were acquired. But after leaving my company, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do next. And I started prepping for engineering interviews and I got some interesting offers. But Google had approached me about joining developer relations. And at that time, I really had no idea what developer relations meant. It sounded interesting to me I was interested because they were interested in me essentially, but I was like, what is developer relations? And then once they explained it to me, I kind of realized that it was the perfect fit for me because it allowed me to combine these technical skills that I had built up through my career, but also leverage my research career and my career operating a business, combining skills like storytelling, teaching, writing, marketing, and so on. So I started at Google and I ended up moving into a leadership position there, founding developer relations for a new product area and then building a team. And then in January of this year, I left Google to join Skyflow.
Nice. And so you led up what there? You said like Poditarian. What is
product area? I led a product area.
I thought it was like some sort of sound like Atlantis or something. Productarian. I was like, wow, that sounds like some cool product there. And where did you kind of sit in the world of developer relations at Google? Was that kind of new for them there, or kind of like what stage were you involved with it?
So developer relations started originally at Google in 2005. So they'd actually, it's been over 15 years. A lot of times people talk about like developer relations being this new thing. And in some ways it's new in terms of like maybe people knowing about it, but like developer evangelism started at Apple in the 1980s. So it's been around for like 40 years in some respect. But in terms of developer relations at Google, I started on the Google Assistant team. So the team is focused on Actions on Google, which is a way for people to build like voice apps on the assistant. And then I was kind of the one rogue outlier that worked on this product that no one else worked on. And then eventually I got reorged to work on that by myself essentially. And then from there, I built up that team and function within the communications org at Google. So I worked on a bunch of products, a product suite that was focused on building different API-based products for businesses to enhance how they communicate with with their customers. So that was over like carrier-based messaging as well as integrations into Google Search and Maps, so that when you search for a business, you could start a conversation with that business essentially.
Nice. And probably the question you hear a lot, just that, a lot of people always wonder, like, and when I've hung out with like people from Google, people are like, well, what is it like to work there? So any kind of like stories of your time there that kind of paints the picture of kind of like what your life was like working there and, within developer relations.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different reasons why I wanted to join Google. I had done a startup that had always been fairly small, and then I wanted to go see what it was like to work at a big company and see kind of how they take products to market. And then the other thing is that working at a place like Google, they do a great job attracting a lot of talent. There's a lot of smart people that you're surrounding yourself with, and there's always people to learn from. So it's a exciting learning opportunity, and it's a great way to, if you're in engineering, to really build up your skills and the best practices around engineering. And the other thing I think that maybe a misperception that can happen with a company like Google that's so big from the outside is you might feel like, oh, I'm going to feel really small within this huge organization. But each product area is really like an independent company in a lot of ways. In many ways, Google's like this loose federation of different ships that are kind of somewhat moving in the same direction. So that's why sometimes there's like even competitive products within the organization, is because they might allow multiple people to have multiple bets about like how to approach a market or something like that. So your whole world really becomes more of these small areas of Google where it's maybe like 100 or 200 people that feels like a small startup or something. It's really over time, as I became moved up the ladder there and became more of a leader of a functional area and a product area, that you start, I think, to feel the weight of this giant organism that is 150,000 full-time employees, where it starts to get, you feel the weight of the organization, I think, when you start to try to work with other product areas and like bring different products together. And but I think as an individual contributor starting in your career, it's an amazing place to be.
Nice. And so now you're at Skyflow. So obviously you want to talk about where I'm at today. So like, hey, all Google's great, all that stuff. So now you're taking all this learning over to Skyflow, working, again, in this world of developers. So tell us a little bit about Skyflow and kind of like what you're doing there and what that sort of community looks like. And if y'all consider yourselves like a dev first company, a dev plus, things like that.
Yeah, we're definitely a dev first company. And that's one difference, I think, from Google. Like Google's very much a developer plus company. They're, a lot of their products they're known for are, search and ads and like consumer facing. And they do have a lot of developer tools, but at the end of the day, they're really focused on consumer-led products. Where Skyflow is very, developer first. We're an API first company. And for those who haven't heard of Skyflow, Skyflow is a data privacy vault delivered as an API. So companies essentially use our APIs to solve things like data privacy, data security, data compliance, and easily use sensitive customer PII, all without breaking privacy. And our goal is to take the space of data privacy and data security that feels sort of on the surface like very complicated, and make it as simple as doing a transaction on Stripe or maybe sending an SMS on Twilio. And I think what really attracted me to joining Skyflow is I think it's an amazing product that's like solving a real problem for companies, but it's also a new category of technology, meaning there's not necessarily a natural alignment in terms of existing communities. So when it came to community building, we've had to build a lot from scratch. And also, even though the company's been around since 2019, it's a really complicated product to build. You don't just wake up one day and bang out a data privacy vault and a solution for data privacy that enterprises are going to use over a weekend or something like that. So the first couple of years were really spent developing the product, and but there, in terms of community building and going to market, we're really just starting that journey. So we really need to bring the technology to the world, build awareness that the solution exists. And I've been really laying the groundwork and strategy and plans for how we do that. And since I've joined, a lot of what I focused on is kind of just like showing up, like making sure that we have a presence in terms of content and social events and videos, and making sure that our messaging feels authentic to an engineering audience, and trying to educate the world that a solution like this exists and that people need to care about how they treat customer data. And we've done a lot, I think, of work on the developer experience side as well, which I see as sort of the next stage of a developer's journey beyond just building awareness in a community. So essentially, once we've captured someone's attention, how can we give them what they need to be successful and we don't have like a leaky bucket? So we have a product-led developer experience team and documentation team. Our head of docs actually was on my team at Google, and he's amazing. So he joined recently. And I work closely with those teams, making sure that things like our documentation is easy to understand through friction logging, and that we're collecting the right kind of metrics, and we're establishing baseline metrics like DSAT and creating feedback loops. And there's still a lot that we need to do, but I think we've made some pretty cool investments so far, like to create a great developer experience. We recently relaunched our doc site, which we built our own doc site from the ground up. And we did that because we really felt like existing tools limited our ability to create like a really integrated product experience where the documentation feels part of the product. And I think that's something that you see a lot of times with companies is the documentation feels kind of siloed, and essentially companies are sort of shipping their org charts with their documentation, the developer product tool, and maybe the like marketing landing page. And that's not an experience that we want. I think the best companies in the world, when it comes to developer experience, community building, all those things work together. And then since we're in the data privacy space, we've also tried to build a lot of best practices into the product and make that the default experience and make it really easy to get started. So in the type of data that people store in a data privacy vault is highly specialized. This is like, PII, personally identifiable information, healthcare information, banking information. And the type of data that you're storing tells you a lot about the use cases for how you're going to utilize that data. For example, if you're storing like a social security number, there's really only a few ways that you legitimately use a social security number. Like you need a full social security number for doing things like a credit score. But most of the time, maybe you only need the last 4 digits for customer verification, or maybe you need to do something like look up whether a social security number exists. But that's really about it. And the data privacy vault understands these semantics and can provide essentially out of the box schemas, connectors to third parties, security and privacy controls that based on that understanding it, making it so even a non-expert in the privacy space can do the right things and be up and running quickly. So we're really trying to leverage our knowledge and expertise within Skyflow in terms of the people there that have a lot of experience in this world, and bake their knowledge and experience into the product so that it's just the default and even non-experts can use it.
Nice. And we are here with Community Hour episode 6 with Sean Falconer from Skyflow. That's skyflow.com. Go check it out. And since you've been at Skyflow, has there been any like 1 or 2 just like amazing community or developer community stories that have taken place?
Yeah, I think, we're still early in this journey, but I think one of the things that or most fun things I think that I've done since I joined that was also really effective was we did a joint webinar with the company Move.io. So Move is a platform that developers use to essentially embed payment functionality and other like banking related things into their applications. And we have a partnership with Move. And as part of that, we did a joint webinar where I built this really fun demo that showed how to use Skyflow with Move to protect customer data and do secure payments. So I created this fictitious company called Instabread, which is a gig economy company like Instacart, but only delivers bread. And I built the gig worker sign up process where I had to collect PII and banking information. And then during the webinar, myself and a product manager for Move essentially walked people through how the application was built, how it works, and showed how easy a lot of this stuff can be if you just use the right tools. And then now I'm extending that demo for something that I'm working on for the Snowflake Summit next month. And essentially the demo for Snowflake is going to show the full life cycle of data in like a modern system. So it's like collection, usage, passing data securely to third parties, analytics, all while preserving privacy and reducing the surface area available to an attacker. And I really like it when you can take content and like repurpose it and reuse it for different audiences. And when we think about our developer audience at Skyflow, we're really trying to appeal to developers across a variety of different levels in an organization. So there's the C level, this, the CTO or the CISO that maybe has like the buying power for a product like ours. There's the architect that needs to understand how to integrate with us. And then there's the application developer who maybe uses our APIs and SDKs to do the integration. So the exact same content presented the exact same way doesn't necessarily appeal to everyone in sort of that value chain. And not everyone has the same learning style. So it's great when you can kind of present something in a variety of different forms. And we're going to take that demo and probably turn it into a code lab and do an on-demand webinar. And there's a whole spread of types of things that we can do with that content.
Nice. And then same question as Jillian. So do you have a secret superpower in your role as developer relations? Or if you had one, what would it be?
I think my, secret superpower is, and this has been, I think something that I've leveraged throughout my career is I think I'm really good at like prioritizing and I think this is applicable, especially like as, if you're an entrepreneur and then also moving into developer relations, especially in leadership roles, there's just so many different things that you can do and so many different good ideas. And there's always these like shiny pennies and beautiful butterflies that you can chase after and they look really good on the surface, but maybe they're distractions or they lead to thrashing. And I think I'm really good at figuring out what is the things that we need to be focusing on and then what's the proper order of execution on those things. So I can end up at the end of the day having a really high volume of output and have high performing teams, but by essentially eliminating those distractions.
Awesome. And now over to our lightning round questions to wrap it up. I'm here live with Sean Falconer. That's just at Sean Falconer, all one word. He's got his name out there on Twitter if you want to connect, or at skyflow.com, doing some amazing things in the world of developers. So we got 3 lightning round questions for you, Sean. Number 1, what would you say is the biggest misunderstanding of developer relations?
I think it's that. I mean, there's a bunch of them, but I think it's that like a lot of times like other functions see a snapshot of the tactics that we use and essentially assume that's what our function is. For example, like if I help a potential customer with something technical, then someone that doesn't really understand what we do or the full picture of it, they just kind of put us in the customer support bucket. Or one time I was at Google and in a meeting, someone described developer relations as, oh, those are the people that make videos. And that might be one output of someone in developer relations, but that really has nothing to do with sort of the larger objectives and strategy. So you end up with the oversimplifications of what we actually do. It's kind of like describing core engineering as, the people who break production systems, because I saw that happen one time.
Right. And then and then for lightning round question number 2, do you have a last book that you read that you really, 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 really loved?
I read this book last year, but I always end up recommending it. It's called $1 Trillion Coach. And it's about this guy, Bill Campbell, who I think he was a football coach for a college team. And then he essentially went on to coach famous technology leaders like Steve Jobs, Larry Page, Eric Schmidt, and a bunch of others. And the book talks about how he builds trust with people and how he builds high performing teams. And that's a really, really great book.
Nice, man. We're getting some good book recommendations today. And then last question for you. What's been your favorite or most memorable moment or day as a community or developer relations or even business professional to date across your entire career?
Ooh, that's a big one.
Whatever jumps to mind first.
Yeah, I would. So I think that one of the things that I did at Google in my first year was I organized this 2-day boot camp that we hosted at the Mountain View campus. And I was working on this product where the developer go-to-market was people who were used to essentially doing like SMS aggregation, which is like mostly a one-way communication channel. And the product I worked on allowed you to use carrier-based messaging, but to create these like rich conversational experiences. So it was like a real paradigm shift for most of the people working in that space. And I ended up inviting essentially everyone in the community to Mountain View to take part in the event. And I had people from all over the world come from South Africa, Europe, Australia, and they spent 2 days with me. And I did all the curriculum. I wrote all the SDKs and sample code across 4 languages. I hired a magician and a DJ for entertainment, and we had a hackathon. And really until the opening talk, I was like terrified that no one would show up. But we ended up like running out of food and having to convince the cafe workers at Google to give us food and raid the micro kitchens and so on. But it was one of the funnest things I ever worked on. It was super ambitious, but it was a ton of fun. And we had a lot of great impact and community building that came out of that event.
And how many people did you end up with?
It was around 100 or so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right. Well, it's so great to catch up with you, hear about your career working at Google, what you're up to at Skyflow. Any final thoughts or anything exciting that you want to talk about as we let you go?
If you're listening and the things that I was talking about with Skyflow sounds interesting to you, make sure you check us out. I also host bi-weekly webinars that are live with live demos and live Q&A. So you can always feel free to join one of those too if you want to learn more.
And developers aren't just the video people. Anybody watching today, hopefully, there's definitely storytelling's key, things like that. But hey, Sean, thanks so much. It's just amazing. Really love seeing all the amazing things that you're doing in your role, all the information you're sharing back on LinkedIn. Be sure to connect with Sean on LinkedIn too. Just one of the best, really business professionals. Just the inspiration. You don't even have to work in developer relations. Just a lot of the cool and great stuff that Sean's doing. Be sure to go follow him on LinkedIn. But yeah, we'll try to get you up if you have time back at the end for just a quick panel Q&A.
All right. Thank you.
Up next, we are bringing the chaos. We are bringing the CHAOS chaos to the stage. The legend in developer relations has the best webcam of anybody that I've seen. Everybody's like, what webcam are you using? What setup? What lighting? It's like one of the best. We are going to bring Jason Yee up from Gremlin. Jason, how's it going?
It's going well. How's it going with you, Blake?
Oh my God. Look, this video, the lighting is just so beautiful. This is like, you're like the North Star for everybody doing like live or video anything.
Thanks. It's actually not super complex. I've got a document if anybody wants info about how to get this set up. This is actually a really old Sony a6000. So not super expensive or too difficult.
Nice. I got like the Logitech Brio and I'm constantly bringing in lights and I'm never as cool as Jason. I'm like, what am I doing? Then I'll end up like a $50,000 like studio set up and Jason's still like, one day I'll be as cool as Jason. Man, so much last I saw you was like in person at KubeCon LA. And then but out of context for those not familiar with you, talk a little bit about like, we've got Jason Yee over at Gremlin, does chaos engineering. I think of chaos engineering, Gremlin like jumps to mind. But if you want to tell people a little bit about your career journey and then kind of what you're up to today at Gremlin.
Yeah, absolutely. So my career journey, like many folks in developer relations, I started as a developer, full stack dev, got into doing a lot of Drupal work. And that's what got me into community because the Drupal community is just amazing. So I basically got voluntold to lead a meetup group after I asked the organizer a little bit of details about whether we were starting and what was going on. And he was like, you could actually do this. So that got me into the community. My career then progressed very quickly in the Drupal world, doing a lot of community related stuff. That led me to MongoDB. After Mongo, I ended up working at O'Reilly, and that was my first full-time community role. So at O'Reilly, I was the community manager for DevOps, web performance, security, and design. So a bunch of just sort of somewhat connected groups, but leading the communities there. That really got me particularly into the DevOps community, which is where I really resonated. Ended up leading me to work at Datadog as their senior evangelist. And from there at Datadog, we were doing chaos engineering, and I really fell in love with the process. So that led me to join Gremlin, where we now do chaos engineering as a full-time thing.
Nice. And what are some of the things that you're working on there at Gremlin today as it relates to developer relations and community? What are some of the exciting stuff you got going on?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff going on. So largely at Gremlin, I lead our educational outreach. So we do a lot of workshops. If you're interested in learning more about chaos engineering, gremlin.com/bootcamps is the link for that. So you can learn more. But more than that, we've got a Slack community. So the chaos engineering Slack is something that Gremlin volunteers to run. So we pay all the bills on that, but it is an open community. Anyone can join and learn more about chaos engineering. There's over 8,000 folks in that Slack now. So that's a good thing. And then on top of that, since I did mention that we run education, we rolled out a certification program last year. So as if you're interested in learning more about chaos engineering and actually adding that to your profile as a developer or an engineer, we do have a certification program. There are 2 levels in it. So folks can enroll for that, learn more about it, take an exam, and add a nice badge to their LinkedIn profile.
And for those kind of like out of context, how do you describe like chaos engineering? Someone was like, isn't engineering always like chaotic? Like what's the, so what is that kind of like for those kind of like trying to like, what does chaos engineering look like?
Yeah, engineering is definitely chaotic, especially as we're moving to systems that are, microservices based, and we're increasing the velocity of how rapidly we deploy code. So everything's constantly changing. So I like to describe chaos engineering is intentionally injecting controlled amounts of failure into your system to actually proactively see how they react, and use that information to better yourself as an engineer or a developer, so you know how things behave in the real world, but also to build more reliable systems and applications.
Nice. And kind of almost like, forgot I was going to like, needed to weed this into today. So I switched roles, jobs, stuff like that. So I'm not going to KubeCon Valencia, but are you going to KubeCon Valencia?
I am. Yeah, super excited about that. So if any of our viewers are going to be in Valencia, drop by the Gremlin booth. I'll be there. Say hi. I think we'll have a bunch of great swag to give away.
Nice. Yeah, you always do. And is there like just for my sanity, like, is there like, what are you excited about at KubeCon Valencia? Like, we just did the one in LA, which is kind of interesting, like, given the when we're trying to do everything and the pandemic, things like that. But what's kind of going on at KubeCon Valencia for those like on the fence, or is there anything exciting? What are you most looking forward to there?
Yeah, to me, I'm most looking forward to actually just getting back in person with the community. There's so many people, especially over there in Europe, right, with travel being shut down for the past 2 years, that I just haven't seen those folks and given them a hug or just had good in-depth meaningful conversations with them. As much as we have tools like this, we're on the stream and we're chatting together, it was much different when we were both in KubeCon and I was able to give you a hug, right? Like that was amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Nice. And then kind of for developer relations professionals out there today that are just kind of like, we've got so many people like in new roles and kind of like they don't know what they don't know. They've got to write goals. They've got to figure out what their KPIs are. Their engagement numbers may be going down. Marketing may say, hey, we just threw up a Slack, Discord. Isn't that all we need? So is there like 1 or 2 tips for people coming into this, like, that you would tell them, like, okay, just stay calm, or what would Jason Yee tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would tell them there's really 2 things to focus on, right? One, and I think Jillian mentioned this early on, is really to focus on your community. Ultimately, you work for a business, yes, and you want that business to be successful, but it's not going to be successful if you go into the community with ulterior motives. And unfortunately, that's the way that all of your adjacent teams are going to be pushing you, whether that's marketing or sales or customer success. They all have their different KPIs. Yours actually has to be truly engaging and enabling your community. So as you think about that, that's number one is truly engaging with that community. And then number 2 is really, as you define those metrics, really thinking about the quality of that engagement and not the quantity of that engagement. Because ultimately, it is about having true, meaningful relationships with your community. And it doesn't matter if your community is 100 people or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people. The size of the community, while that's great to be large, if those 1,000,000 people in your community are not having meaningful relationships, then they're not really a community. And so then you have to question, what is the value of that if they're not truly a community? So focus on that quality.
Nice. And then speaking of meaningful, is there like 1 or 2 amazing stories that you've had in the world of community and developer relations since you've been at Gremlin?
Yeah, since I've been at Gremlin, it's amazing. The community, especially when we rolled out certifications, that was a huge thing. And I came to it initially when I was chatting with our team about should we do certifications. as somebody that taught myself how to make web pages early on when I was in high school, and I am lucky enough to sort of have come about in the early days of the web, I didn't understand the value of certifications, because for me, it was like, you don't need a badge to prove what you know. But I was wrong. And I'm glad that the community actually pushed us to do it, because there's a lot of our community, particularly in places that aren't North America or Western Europe, where certifications is a huge thing. And it's a huge thing, not just for them to be able to say, I know this thing, but it's a huge thing for them to actually change their lives as they're thinking about getting a job or finding employment in a different part of the world that pays them better, that can actually truly transform where they're at in the world, both geographically, financially, and just quality of life. So that was truly eye-opening for me, and I'm glad the community actually pushed us and kept requesting that we do that. And what we've been seeing with the community in that and getting certified, and how it's elevating people, and in elevating people, elevating the practice of chaos engineering, that's been truly amazing.
Nice. And one thing that's really interesting, so for a lot of the times working in the kind of sphere of developer at companies, have to show examples, because meetups, getting people at virtual events is big. But then for what's really interesting, working with the engineers, the teams to get onto the camera, a lot of them are like, I'm really introverted. So I'm like, let me show you examples of people out there that are great. Like anybody can do it. And so one of them was like watching videos that I sent of you. They're like, how does Jason Yee do it? Like, so for those like in this profession now that have to be digital storytellers that feel I'm too introverted for this, do you just say like, okay, you're introverted, that's fine, just stick with like blog content? Or is there like other ways where you can like see like, no, there's a diamond in the rough? So like for people that are just feeling too introverted to do that, should they just not even try to do it? Or no, this is like the new world order? And is there kind of like one or two kind of coaching tips? A lot of the teams I talk to are like, how in the world are people like Jason Yee doing it, right? I just feel so introverted, and here's this like amazing person that has it all put together.
Yeah, I would say tip number one is find your personality. I think it's so easy to look at YouTubers or folks that are doing this, in a professional way, and being like, I want to be exactly like them, and trying to mimic their style, and trying to mimic, how they talk or how they film themselves. It's easy to do, and there's plenty of tips. They'll all tell you exactly how they're doing their video setup and everything else, but ultimately, that's going to make you uncomfortable when you're on camera, when you're recording yourself. So number one, find your own style and just embrace that. So whatever that is. And with that, right, like as you're chatting with people in real life, you embrace your own style. You're not thinking about how am I being recorded, how am I coming off. So when you embrace your own style, just translate that to being on camera when you're recording videos or when you're on streams like this. I think that's the number one tip, is just be yourself. Now, for me, there's a bunch of other tips along with that. Most of my cameras have a teleprompter, so I will often, for my talks, I'll script it out. But some of that falls in line with the embracing your own personality, right? Is writing that script, knowing how you naturally speak, and writing it out as yourself. That really helps. And for talks that are actually pre-recorded, it helps me stay on track and make sure that I hit all of my notes in the exact wording that I want. I know other people don't recommend scripting. It's sort of a personal choice. But I find if you're introverted and you're a little less sure about yourself and that impromptu sort of improv style of talking, then scripting it out could be a good way to start.
Wow, it's an amazing tip. So we are live with Community Hour episode 6. We got Jason Yee about to be at Valencia. Be sure to check out the Gremlin booth there. Put links to your Twitter and to Gremlin into the chat. So same question as everybody else. So do you have a secret superpower? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I would say my superpower is to be able to take complex information and make it accessible. And the way that I often do that is through analogies, because I feel like if you can connect with somebody on a topic that they understand and explain a complex issue to them in that language and within that sort of framework that they understand, it really, really helps them to understand that complex info. So yeah, break things down, use analogies when you can. And part of that is to use analogies, you have to have a broad knowledge of just a bunch of different things. So don't be afraid to dive into topics that you don't know or that you're really not interested in because other people are. So having that shared connection is extremely beneficial when you're doing community work.
Nice. And then as we wrap it up, lightning round, 3 quick rapid fire questions for you. So number one, same question as Sean. What do you see as like the biggest misunderstanding in the world of developer relations, or when we say developer relations, the biggest like misconception, confusion is?
The biggest misconception to me is that we are not tech influencers. We may be on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, but ultimately that's not the goal. It's not how many followers you have. It really is about those relationships. Some of the best people in community that I know have less than 1,000 followers on Twitter. Like they're just barely there, but they have super meaningful interactions with people. They enable developers in a very great way. So don't focus on your followers, focus on the quality of your relationships.
Oh man, that's golden. Yes, totally agree. Rapid fire question number two: is there a last book that you read that you really, 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 really loved?
Yeah, it wasn't recent, but one of the books that I absolutely love is How We Got to Now. Um, so, How We Got to Now is a book about innovation. And basically, the reason that I love it is we often are trying to find innovative solutions to things. And when we do that, we're thinking we have to think out of the box. We have to think of something new. How can we get creative to solve something? And How We Got to Now is really this story that all of the innovations in our world are connected. We build on the things that have been previously built. So if you're thinking like, I'm not a super genius, I'm not innovative, read the book because it will naturally get you to start thinking that innovation is really taking things that are maybe just good or maybe not so good and making them great. And I think that's something that everybody can do. You don't have to invent things, just continue to work to make them better.
Sold. I want to get that book. And last rapid fire question for you. So, looking back on your career and working around community developers, what was your best day or favorite moment?
Oh, favorite moment in my career. This one's a little bittersweet, but one of my favorite moments in my career was actually when I was at O'Reilly and we were at OSCON. So it was myself, Josh Simmons, who is the community manager for open source, and Jonathan Johns, who is also a community manager on open source projects there. Uh, and the bittersweet part is it was right around the time of the whole Gamergate issue. And so there was a big thing in the community of a bunch of bad actors coming into the community. And so we were at OSCON here in Portland, Oregon, in person. And it sort of was a playing out of what you see a lot of times in online communities and forums of bad actors coming in. And when it's online, it's a little interesting because there's always the ban hammer. You just like block people, delete their accounts, and such. But this one was one where it started to play out in real life, and we had some bad actors show up. And what impressed me and why it's one of my favorite community moments was seeing the community come together and band together to say that we are going to reject hate. We are going to actually protect our community members and be a unified voice in that to say that these things are not okay. We have a code of conduct and we need to respect everybody and treat them with respect. So that was definitely a great thing. Also, shout out again to Josh Simmons and John Johns because they did a bunch of fantastic work with that as well.
Wow, that's truly amazing when the community comes together, and it's the magic that when it does happen, regardless of the situation. And as we kind of just let you go today, come back for if you want to stick around for the panel, things like that, that's great. Any kind of else that you want to mention about Gremlin, exciting, or anything to kind of take us out before bring you back up for the panel?
Yeah, I think I've already mentioned a few things, but if you didn't catch those links, gremlin.com/community has all of the information that I've shared about certifications, about workshops and things like that. So gremlin.com/community, come join us in the chaos engineering community. We'd love to have you and show you how you can break your things and become a better engineer through it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And like we mentioned, if you're at KubeCon Valencia, who doesn't want to be in Spain on the coast there? Be sure to go check out the Gremlin booth or Jason. Thanks so much for being on today, and then hopefully stick around for the panel. All right. Up next, one of the coolest community tools out there. So happy to have one of the coolest tools. Used it a few times where other companies have like done some like video testimonial drives, things like that. And it's one of the biggest like challenging things as community professionals. You want video UGC, user generated content, but it's like even though we all got smartphones of different kinds, it's still like a huge task to get like community members to record videos, that type of deal, right? It's like you trying to do it. It really is a tough task. It's not how much the reward is, things like that, but really amazing with Capsule. They've got it really down into a form factor to make it easy. So ask yourself, do you want to basically do it the old hard way, get like 50 video testimonials in across campaigns of different things? Or do you want to be in the thousands, right? So Capsule is one of the first tools I've seen where you can actually get into the thousands. So we've got Mary Ann out of Colorado. Get her up to stage, Mary Ann. So just kind of setting the stage here for Capsule and kind of where I see like for, especially for where community teams could be struggling today with it. So if you want to tell us a little bit about your career journey and start to tell us a little bit about Capsule.
Yeah. So I definitely didn't start off traditional like everyone has mentioned before. I actually went to school for film, so not anywhere close to customer success or community at all. And I was right after college freelancing in New York, working for TV and commercial productions. And then from there, I stumbled into events, specifically around photo and video experiences. And in March 2020, I had to pivot because those were no longer available, but I still wanted to do something creative and in video. And really luckily, this new startup presented itself to me. And it's all about not just video tools themselves, but about making it easier for people to use video. And that really resonated with me. So I was like, yes, I want to take this opportunity and go with it. And being in customer success, I feel like was just like a natural place for a lot of the different skills that I picked up along the way, whether it was in organizing logistics for events and making sure that people get from point A to B and being able to communicate that effectively to a bunch of different people, or from keeping a level head from working in the service industry and just always being on top of things and knowing what you need to do next and never letting it overwhelm you. So yeah, it's been a journey for sure, but I feel really happy with where I'm at now, and Capsule is such a really cool company.
Yeah, and kind of like getting into Capsules. So the part that I think really jumps out to me for community professionals is that video testimonial part and being able to capture it. And so instead of me talking about it, like if you want to say like some words about like that video testimonial, how community teams, really any companies can use that, because it's like for me, it's the question: do you want to get like under 100, or are you trying to get like thousands? It's just like there's a before and after, like the capsule effect, if you will.
Yeah. So the other thing that really appeals to me about Capsule is it's all about making it more accessible and easier for folks to get on camera and to tell their story. So the way that companies and businesses have been doing that is by opening it up to their communities, whether that's their internal employees being able to tell their own story of why this company means so much to them, what being a part of this company means to them, or nominating someone for an award for the hard work that they've done. Or it's your customer community and opening it up to them about how do you use our product every day? What tips and tricks do you have for getting the most out of our product, or just testimonials and reviews? It's a lot easier to use, and video can be so intimidating. So making that as smooth of a process for folks as possible is really great for just getting everyone on camera.
Nice. And what's that kind of like, so I'm familiar with the workflow. So then it's like, this sounds, people out there, okay, this is great, Mary, but what is this like a game changer? So what in this workflow for people that haven't seen it, how would you describe that workflow for where members can come on, quickly do their video? Because they can go to a page, basically a sort of a white label page where they can go create the video. And then now you also have like, if there's a carousel or embedded player of videos, there's also that record button that they can click and then do a video just there. So paint that kind of picture of that kind of workflow and how you're making it so much easier to capture community members, like recording videos to tell stories in all different types of ways.
Yeah, so that's something I've been really excited about lately because we've really improved all of the different ways that you can integrate Capsule into your existing web pages and apps. We've made it copy and paste that easy to take a gallery of videos or a record button and add it into your existing systems, which is really crucial because it reduces the amount of friction that someone would have in taking that step to record a video. If it's already on a page that they're interacting with and it just opens up a pop-up and they see themselves and they can hit the record button, they're far more likely to complete that video 100% than if they were to go to another page. They had to enter in information first in order to be able to take that video. All of that creates friction, which ultimately could lead someone to not completing that video. So being able to have that as a seamless part of an experience that you have already built and have it just integrate into your existing layout. It's malleable, it's customizable. You can change it to make it look and feel like your brand. Makes it all a lot easier to add that to spaces that you already have.
And then for the community member, like just like a little bit about what they see. So suddenly they're on the page, there's a button to record a video. And just instantly when they click on that, what's that little interface look like? And how is that making it so much easier for them to be able to then produce that video content?
Yeah. So the other thing that I'm really excited about is that we've upgraded our camera. So now everything appears in the preview window that you see when you're recording. So it opens up a pop-up, you get to see yourself, and then there is a question or a set of instructions that you're going to be responding to when you're recording that video that appears right above the record button. So it's all in one view. It's all streamlined so that it's not in a place over here. You have to look over here to see, oh, what am I responding to again? It's all right there in front of your screen. So you can hit that record button and start talking, or you can even upload a video that you already had recorded. So if you are a little bit more shy on camera and just want to be able to have that pre-recorded, we were talking about earlier, having a pre-recorded moment where you just have more of that time to take your time with it, edit to what you need, you'd still be able to participate in a capsule. It doesn't have to be on the fly, something that you have memorized or anything like that.
Nice. And you can also, like for me, I always mess up with the first take. So you can also do like multiple takes until you get it right.
Exactly. Yeah. We want to make it really easy for folks because it can be really intimidating to be on camera, but telling your story and having you be the person that tells your story, we want to make that as easy as possible for you.
Nice. And you do also offering now like some light, like English captions, right? For some of the videos?
Yeah, captioning is a part of all of our videos. It is English right now, but that's something that we have on our roadmap is to be able to support multiple languages, but it is automatically transcribed too. So another part of our roadmap is making it so that it's editable too, so that like some of those acronyms that don't really translate so well by a robot can be edited by a person.
Nice. And so we've got Mary Ann on. Do you just do Mary or Mary Ann? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
Mary Ann, although legally it's Mary, so you're right either way.
Yeah, when I hit that, I was like, wow, I've never even asked that, but which you normally always do as a host. But so some of the interesting ways for Capsule, so people like this is interesting. So it's like if you've got new members, there's always that honeymoon phase. New members want to say, hello world, this is me, this is Jason, this is Sean. So you can actually have that as part of like anybody onboarding, create your own like videos of introducing yourself that instantly go into the community feed. Or if you're running a campaign, different things, like you can make that video content, getting members to tell their stories on video, that reflectivity. So people in Venezuela could see other people like them or other parts of the world, really showcasing that diversity of the members. It's great to have marketing content that we put out. But when members can see themselves, hear themselves, and kind of make that human, that's where it really gets real. So there's a lot of interesting ways to use Capsule for that. And one of the kind of the questions I kind of had walking away from it is, really cool. You can do this embedded carousel. But then I was like, wait a minute, if we're doing all these like different campaigns, as we sort of like think of a carousel that has like 3 videos in it, how easy is it to say like I don't want to be like mixing up campaigns like in that carousel? So there could be like campaign A, B, C, and D. Is there like a tag or some way within a carousel that could show up where only content that's going in there is just for campaign A, or just something that's like tagged a certain thing? What kind of flexibility do you have there to be very specific for a series of videos, like for a specific campaign, or a series of videos that are tagged in a certain way, if that makes sense?
That's an amazing question, and I love it. We have categories, like as a way of filtering out or tagging specific videos with a specific category or topic. And what's really amazing about our JavaScript embed, and I'm so sorry, the sun is finally coming in, so I'm super bright. But so one of the really amazing things about the customization elements of our JavaScript embed is that you can take it and filter by a specific category. You can filter it by your favorites. There's a lot of different ways that you can organize the videos that are going to appear in your grid if you choose to display your grid. And at the same time, it's also really easy to create multiple capsule campaigns. So if you wanted to have a separate library entirely for each specific prompt or theme or topic, that's something that's really easy to set up. One of my favorite customers, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, actually uses this really well. They really wanted to start a campaign of student-generated content specifically to use for admissions marketing content. And the 3 themes that prospective students resonate with the most are academic resources, career resources, and community resources. So every couple of weeks, they ask their students a new question related to those 3 themes. And they have separate capsule categories for each of those so that their content is bucketed by that specific theme. And it's really easy for them to then post those videos based on the specific theme out to their YouTube channel, eventually to their website, to all the different marketing materials that they have for their admissions process for prospective students.
Nice. So if you're like Jason Yee, so it's like KubeCon LA, you could have a player for that. But then if you're doing something for Valencia, that's like a separate one or categorized a different way, but you could do that. So it's like, because you don't care about LA when you're doing like Valencia. So capsule
Right.
for teams that want to have that sort of breakout, they can easily do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. And so that's all great with the video UGC, things like that. But you just relaunched kind of Capsule 2.0, and even I don't know. So what's like this full like ecosystem? What else can we do in the world of Capsule?
So another tool that I'm really, really excited about, because this hits on a lot of my background in video editing, is Capsule Studio. And Capsule Studio is a video editing tool that you can take any video, whether it was recorded on Capsule or one that you already have on your computer or phone, and apply a template to it. Because the way that our system works is we take video design and we turn it into code so that you can take videos and process them in seconds and have them come out fully edited, professional looking. They have music in the background, they have animations and graphics, all happening within seconds. You don't need to open up Adobe Premiere. You don't need to know all of the little intricate details of how Adobe Premiere works. I can tell you it takes years to perfect it. There's a big learning curve for that. And not everyone has the time or resources to be able to learn something like that. So when we've turned it into templates, we've taken all of those complications of using something like Adobe Premiere, and we turned it into something that we have made into a form-based editor. So instead of knowing how all these different effects work and dragging them to a specific timeline in your in Premiere, you can take a video, apply a template to it, and then enter in the information via text or checking a box, turning on a toggle, and you edit a video in seconds and are able to export it in a bunch of different formats. It doesn't take hours to do, it takes minutes. So Studio is the tool that allows you to be able to do that, a form-based video editing tool that hopefully will make it a lot easier and faster for folks to take clips from something like this, a live show, and pull highlights from it and have it edited with my name in the bottom, with animations, designs, music in the background, and done in a matter of hours rather than a matter of days.
And can you add like a caption overlay in it?
Yes, we also are working on making that something that can match a design. Right now, it's just the auto captions, but we're working on making that something that you can, kind of like TikTok and other platforms have done, where you can move it around, make it visible, things like that.
Oh, nice. I mean, it's kind of for, really just, and it's kind of like one of the questions I had for you. It's kind of like we've entered this phase and everybody has to be a great digital storyteller, whether we like it or not, for just so many of our roles. And so for kind of like in your perspective, like for being a digital storyteller, like how critical do you think of that as like as a job skill, right? Soft skills are like paramount too, which is a lot of people raise past, but digital storytelling is one of these like ones that maybe not talked about enough. So what do you kind of recommend for people that, as we enter into this phase, it's been around for a while, right? But now it's like, it feels like a critical part. So people want to be like digital storytelling, like, hey, Marianne, I want to start to get into this digital storytelling stuff. What are the tips to get started?
Yeah, I would say the one thing that has really helped me to improve my storytelling is, and it's all done on video, is to consistently ask yourself when you're telling that story to pause, take a moment, and ask yourself, who are you telling this story to? Who is your audience? Because that really helps me to reel it back in, to stay on track, to tell my story effectively, and to communicate effectively. And that's something that I'm continuously improving on, but that's really helped me to be able to tell my story confidently and effectively. Because I understand that is not super easy for folks. And like Jason, I also write out a script before any video that I create. I think it's really helpful. Surprised that some folks don't recommend that, because seeing your thoughts laid out before you go in, even if you go off script and improvise certain things, seeing it all laid out is really helpful for being able to tell that story effectively and confidently, because confidence is the one thing that is very, very important when you're on camera and telling a story.
Nice. And then, so since your time at Capsule, what's like your most amazing community or customer story that you've heard about or that you've gotten to experience so far?
There's been a lot. I have to say that my favorite moments are just seeing our customers think outside the box, because there's so many different ways that you can use video, and video can enhance so much more than just a single project or a single campaign. It can enhance your marketing materials, your support forums, things like that. So really seeing our customers that get it and think outside the box and do something special, maybe for their employees rather than their customers, makes me really happy, because I just see how it affects their employees, how it makes them feel like they're being appreciated or things like that. There's just something so personal about video, and it can really enhance a lot of experiences for companies.
Nice. And so we are live, Community Hour, episode 6. We've got Marianne from Capsule on. I got a link to your Twitter, to the site. And kind of interesting there. So, I was talking to somebody this week. They're like, Blake, in the world of video, it's the hottest thing. Everybody wants it. But we're only as good as our budget. We're only as good as our in-house agency, or we're only as good as our external agency. And I'm like, no longer with tools like Capsule is that the case, right? So you can still have in-house video, and they've got a bandwidth. There's only so many headcount, and video is intensive. You can have an external agency. It's all based on like how much you're like, how many hours you got with them, so forth. But with Capsule, like this is a tool anybody can use today to generate thousands of videos, depending on like what stage your community is in. Right? If you're just getting started, maybe you're not going to get 1,000, but it's an easy way. You've got it down to a form factor. So regardless of your budget, things like that, you can scale really quickly, right? It's an amazing tool there. It just is a big disruptive game changer. Definitely recommend for people to go and check it out. So just context there, right? So forget the budget talk, what agency we have, don't, or headcount, blah, blah, blah. add Capsule into that mix. Make your life easier. Stop, if you keep doing the same things, expecting different results, that's madness. So this kind of setting stage there. So the other question I asked everybody else. So in your business or at Capsule, do you have a secret superpower? And if so, or just as a video storyteller, things like that, if you have a secret power, and what is it?
My secret superpower is that I am able to memorize a script. Like, you could give it to me for a demo 30, 45 minutes before I have to present live, and I will have it memorized in that time. I don't know. I don't know where I got it from, but it's definitely been a superpower that's helped me out. One time, I wrote out an entire script, and my boss read it over and was like, "Actually, I want to scrap the whole thing." And my demo was in 45 minutes, and I was definitely nervous about it, but I was able to pull it off and presented that live for, I think it was like 5-6 minutes. Yeah, nerve-wracking, but I did it.
No, I totally get it. Like at big company life, the biggest companies I work for in community, it didn't have a CRM. CRMs were forbidden. So I had to basically, for hundreds of thousands, millions of members, I had to memorize everybody's name, like Bob 1, 2, 3, know who they were, what part of the country, kids, pets, everything about them. So I had to memorize everything here, so that really sharpen like your memorization skills. So it's like something you have to like get into repetition. So totally getting that memorization. Once you start clicking those gears, it's like amazing. And then let's get into the lightning round question, and we'll get some panel stuff up for a few minutes. So you speak, this is rapid fire. For internationals, like rapid fire, we say really quick Q&A, things like that. Probably none of that translates. But for the first question in the lightning round, so you speak 2 languages, in English and Italian, I believe. How did that happen? And do you plan to learn 10 more languages?
I lived in Rome for a year, probably the best year of my life. That's where I learned to speak Italian fluently. Can't say that I can speak fluently now. I am rusty, but it's still there. And I do plan on learning Japanese, actually. My best friend lives in Tokyo, so I want to be able to speak Japanese when I visit.
Very cool. Yeah, one of the biggest like SEO experts in the world, Hayata, that I got a chance to work with. He's out of Chicago. I should definitely connect you, because I'm always like pinging down for like different things and stuff. So he'd be a great teacher as well to help out.
Yeah, I would love that, because it's all about practicing. You can only watch so many movies in the language.
It's like so nuanced. I like, just on the film side, I would be like interviewing people that were like Japanese filmmakers. And so they would talk for 5 minutes, and then the person translating would come back and say, "Yes, they really liked your question, Blake." I'm like, they just talk for like what's, so it's like it's such a nuanced, beautiful language. Even like the writing and all that stuff, just amazing. So that's dang. I should almost like, let's all say today, everybody here, we're all going to learn Japanese. You're walking away. We're going to try Capsule. We're going to check out Gremlin. We're going to check out Zapier. Check out Skyflow, and we're all going to learn Japanese. So that's do it. Nothing else this week. You have to do that. Question 2: what is the last book that you read and really, 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 really loved?
The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. If you're really into magic and fantasy and a little bit of romance, I highly recommend it.
Wow, Night Circus. Wow, we got a lot of great recommendations. Last lightning round question: what has been your favorite moment, like around community or just as a business professional to date? What was that kind of one big, like memorable, amazing career day or moment or experience that you've had so far, or just the first thing that comes to mind?
So I'm really new in the community space, but one thing I noticed that I absolutely could not be where I am without it is how open the community industry is of connecting you with your peers and having spaces to share resources. I've really appreciated the community club. I think they're a really amazing community, and I can't say that I've had that kind of space in any other industry that I've worked in, which has been varied and not been in customer success and community. So that I think is my favorite thing about being a part of. I know that's like very generic and not a single day, but for someone new just starting out, join that. That was the best thing I ever did being a community professional, is joining the community club.
Yeah, it's like as community professionals, if we can all be like one community and uniting as community professionals with their DevRel or the different roles, like nobody else in the world can do it. If we can't get it right, forget it, right? So definitely, it's so amazing. And some industries are so closed and kind of tight, so it's really tough to make inroads. But communities, like one of the hottest professions and one of the biggest professions, and as it's our profession, we have to be able to get along together, be one big family. It's like, if we're not doing it, how can we expect anybody else in the world to do it? And just kind of wrapping up, like, any final thoughts, anything else you want to note on Capsule?
If you're curious, I am always welcome to connect. And I love talking about Capsule. We are here to democratize creativity. So it is something I'm super passionate about, and I would love to connect with you all.
And you're out of the Colorado area, the Rocky Mountain High. Is that Denver?
Denver, yes. I am in the city.
Nice. Not up on a mountain in a ranch and all that stuff. Got it.
Ideally, one day I will be a wizard in a cabin in the mountains, but not today.
With a summer home in Rome or some like coastal town in Italy, right? No.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for Marianne from Capsule for being up. I'll bring anybody else back from the panel. We'll do stick around for some questions, things like that. Hang out before everybody like has a hard stop and back on to endless amounts of shifting left, stand-up meetings, progress updates, fires, whatever else is going on. So let's get Sean and Jason back up here. Hello, everyone. So thanks, everyone, for being on for episode 6 of the Community Hour. So we've got Sean, so we got Marianne out of Denver. Sean, you're out of San Francisco Bay Area?
Yeah, that's right.
And then Jason, I want to say like you're West Coast, but I always forget.
Portland, Oregon.
Portland. Yes. So very nice. And so before today, like none of you had ever met, right?
Just on the Twitter world.
So now here we all are. So it's just amazing, kind of like as in the world of community professionals, it just kind of like, that's the mantra that I say. It's like, if we can't all come together and work together, is there hope for anybody else? Probably not. So it's kind of really great that we can all be here and tell these stories, you know, getting our stories out there, ways we're doing. There's so many people that are new in the space or coming up. And just getting a chance to learn, like books and the other ways is great. But just hearing the stories is like so amazing. So definitely thanks for getting on. With that said, just kind of go around, like what are some of the community trends or just kind of trends that you're seeing, and could also include like developer relations that is exciting to you or interesting of note to you, not all the buzzy stuff, but what are the trends that are super exciting to you? And anybody can jump in there.
One thing that jumps to mind, I think that has happened in part because of a need due to the pandemic, is during that time, you know, we couldn't do a lot of in-person events, which was sort of a go-to tool for a lot of people working in our space. And that really shifted people to, I think, investing more time in creating potentially like evergreen content through video, through traditional content marketing, writing blog posts, as well as hosting remote events. And I remember the first remote event that I hosted at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was kind of like a complete disaster because I tried to take things that I was used to doing in person and then try to translate that directly online, and it just really did not work. But I think people got a lot better at it, and I attended a conference remotely at the head of the year. And I thought, they did a great job. I don't think it completely replaces the value you get with in person. A lot of the value is those conversations that you have outside of the actual like talks that you're attending. But I think we've come a long way from 2 years ago, which I think is something that will continue to happen because it really opens the audience up to a much bigger audience. Now, even conferences that are in person, a lot of them are hybrid. And that way you take, your audience from maybe 5,000 people attending the event to 20, 30,000 people worldwide that can watch a lot of this stuff on demand.
Yeah, it's great. And even a lot of professionals before, they had a family or kids or pets, other stuff. They just couldn't, for other reasons, couldn't physically attend, not because they didn't want to go. Now, hybrid virtual, like you're getting that audience, right? That just for whatever reason couldn't do it or had other types of stuff. So that's just opening the doors. It's great for the in-person community that wants to come, and then the virtual play. So hybrid seems like to me like the model. And then Jason, what are some of the stuff that you're seeing or excited
Yeah,
about?
I mean, I think I'd dovetail off of that. The hybrid thing, I think one of the interesting things that it's done for us is it's allowed people to get directly to the content that they need, right? Like, I mean, when we have conferences, there's the hallway track, which is fantastic, and definitely we love that. But there's also a need of like people are just busy, and so like having that direct access is something that has become really interesting, and it's for better or worse, right? Like I think it's better for community members because they can actually just be like, I'm going to work on stuff and I'm going to have the stream off the side and get the content that I need. It's definitely been a challenge for folks on the marketing side who are like, they're not engaging, they're not coming to our virtual booth. And I think that complaint, I'm hoping that the shift for that will be in maybe what we consider an engagement for coming to a virtual sponsor booth, or like filling out a form or entering for some swag giveaway. Maybe that's actually not real engagement that we should care about. And I think it drives back to a lot of what we've been chatting about of like actual real engagement with the community rather than the business engagement.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get the noise stuff. They're just really simple stuff where you can generate a lot of people talking, right? Go about like, hey, Real Madrid just came back yesterday, amazing, 2 goals, what? But if it doesn't match to your community, you got 3 billion people talking about it. It's like, so what? There's easy ways to do it. But if it doesn't map back to any strategic or tie-in, it's just like basically noise, right? The run of the site ads, the tofu people that it's just like we got in all these like peanut butter super fans, but we make lettuce, right? So where's the connective tissue, things like that. So that's always good. And then Mary Ann, like, what are some of the stuff like in your world of digital storytelling, or just new to community? What's the exciting stuff for you?
I think one of the trends that really is probably coming out of a lot of the negative things that we're seeing in the world, but one positive thing that's coming out of it is that we're seeing people as human and customers as humans and developers as humans. And that's something that I think is leading to a lot more personal interactions with folks. It's a lot more authentic. You're finding people that you're connecting to in a really personal level. So I'd say that that's one thing I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's really interesting. It just brought to mind is like before we went into this pandemic, where it's like it's really made the last 2 years feel like a decade. It just it's just like just this big war and this big storm and fog and just the rough waters we all went through. But like going into that, we are already seeing like lots of just mental health issues around the world in different pockets. We are already in the loneliness epidemic, and now it's like everybody's remote, things like that. So it's where it's kind of like empathy and compassion now is like an all-time high, right? So dealing with community members, like they could be worked up or different things, have to remind people we don't know like what happened in their day or what they're going through. This isn't necessarily a reflection of them. So you can have to like step back a lot of times today is like for where we went into the pandemic and now where we're coming out. It's like we can't have come into a better place, right? So it's just on that mental health and loneliness side is like really understanding where people are, and maybe not, we don't really know what all is going on. So they could see people that are acting up or a little bit more irritated that we never seen before. And that's like kind of across the board. So even not even with community, if I'm going in to get groceries, somebody cuts me off for a parking spot, I'm just like, that's you deal with it. I'm not gonna like trip out or get worried about it. But it's like kind of getting that pulse and health with community is like really important, and understanding that. And I don't know, like kind of like where we go from here, but as we kind of come out of it, it's like, it's like, how do we combat mental health, loneliness? We're all working remote. So some people, they don't have like friends ecosystem. Like I'm out here in Vegas, know practically nobody. And so it's like, where do we start to meaningfully as community professionals or business professionals, start to work with this kind of mental health and loneliness epidemic? I don't know. That's like a big thing to kind of like talk about, but it is interesting to me as we're starting to come out of it that those are like two big factors that we're not really talking about enough. Any thoughts from anybody here?
I can jump in. Yeah, I think you're correct. I know during I started the pandemic, and at the time I still had Google, and that was certainly a big thing that was on all the managers at Google's mind in terms of how people were going to cope with shifting to working from home. Especially a lot of like Google's culture has really been built around bringing people on campus and doing things in person. And I think as a company, they struggled in some ways to kind of shift to being like a fully remote workforce. But I think one of the things they did really well was be really conscious about people's mental health and also have a ton of resources available for people. So I think that's something that a lot of companies could learn from, as well as making those resources available to their people, so that if people are struggling with the fact that they're going from 2 years ago interacting with people every day. A lot of people have picked up and moved to new places for various reasons, and they might find themselves in a place similar to you, Blake, where you're in a new environment, new city, and you don't know a lot of people, and that changes things as well. And maybe you weren't thinking about that when you moved, and then it impacts your day to day more than you realized. So I think companies could make sure that they're focusing on those things and making those resources available to their employees.
Yeah, to add to that, one thing that we've done at Gremlin is introduce new company basically holidays or no work days. One of the things that we found during the pandemic was people just weren't taking vacation, right? Like it was a new world where like people who hadn't worked remotely didn't understand like how do you set that work-life balance when work and life are the same physical space, right? You're working from home, and like when do you start work, when do you end work? It's really easy to just it's 8 p.m. but like you're there and your work computer's right there, and so you just like pop over and like quickly check some email and things like that. And then that bled into vacation time and taking time off, because we're so used to like planning vacations as a trip to go somewhere, and so when you're like, well, I can't really travel, like, where do I go? I mean, I had this issue for that first year in 2020. It's like, I don't know how to do this because I'm so used to traveling, and traveling was equating that to vacation. So it was really great when the company decided, we're just going to put some days in there. It doesn't count against your PTO, but we're going to all agree that we're just going to not work on these days. And use it however you like. And so whether that's just staying home and getting some time back for yourself, or whether that is, getting in the car and going out to a park or a forest or somewhere, that really, really helped with a lot of the issues of being alone and being stuck in that work-life balance.
Anything on your side, Mary Ann?
I guess I would just add to that and also say it's not selfish to take care of yourself, and that there are resources out there for folks that need help. And I'm also excited that it's not a stigma anymore to talk about that. Like, be open and talk about it. There's a release in that too, that hopefully can help some folks, but of course then there's the additional resources for folks that need more help than that. But I really am excited for how this generation is a lot more open to talking about that. I hope that helps a lot of people out there.
Yeah, it's just kind of like you have to be you and authentic, and warts and all, just kind of like accept it. And then it's just like, for a lot of times you think like nobody else is going through this, or I'm unique. And having these communities where you have these Spider-Man moments, there's other people like it. So if you're thinking that I'm the only one, there's other people like it. So it's kind of being able to be open and talk about it. So different things there. Things that I go through is like, does this make sense? But it's like, sometimes it's like, if I put it out there, like other people that didn't feel the confidence to talk about it, or at least know like, hey, I'm not the only one, can just be like such a powerful tool. Or even like writing blog posts or videos of, here's something, here's how I overcame it, or here's how I'm doing with it, can really go like a long way. And we've just got so much as we come out of the pandemic to kind of deal with in that regard. Won't get there overnight. We're way over time, so we're almost like the community 2 hours today. But just the kind of the final thing I would say is, I said this before a few times as a question. So now that we're coming out of the pandemic, what do you hope to do next? And then we get back into a lockdown. But it seems maybe now it's like we're getting into a place. So kind of like in the next 1 or 2 years, is there like a dream thing now that we're kind of coming out of, knock on wood, pandemic? Is there like a dream thing that you really hope to do, whether it's just seeing people in person, hugging people again, elbows, virtual fist bumps, is going to Hawaii? Is there like with everybody here, like is there that one kind of dream thing that during the pandemic it's like, when this thing is over, buddy, I can't wait to do this or that? So do you have like one or two things that is like your dream, like post pandemic, woohoo, this is what I'm going to do? For me, it was just like moving to Vegas, getting out here with remote work, first time ever where you didn't have to be gated to like physically being by a company office. Where would you go? Never had this ever, right? So get out to Vegas where I know everybody, hashtag West Coast life, and made it happen all the way from like North Carolina. It was crazy, but that was mine. So for each of you, what was kind of yours?
I can start.
Go ahead.
Because it's actually pretty similar to yours, Blake. I moved to Denver. That was my big step. And I'm really, really excited to start getting into the Denver tech community. So if anyone has any recommendations for groups, events, things like that, I'm here for it. I'm so excited to start making a home here.
I can jump in. So for me, it's a personal one. So during the pandemic, my wife and I have had 2 children. So we only have pandemic babies. We don't know what it's like to be parents not in a pandemic. And then myself and my sisters, my parents, we live in 3 different countries. And my parents' 50th wedding anniversary was a couple of years ago, and we had these grand plans to meet in Portugal and do like a big family thing there to celebrate. And of course, we couldn't do that. But this summer, we're all doing something slightly less ambitious, but we're going to meet in Prince Edward Island in Eastern Canada, near where I grew up. And the 3 families or 4 families are going to all fly into there and meet up and finally get kids together, and I'll see my sisters for the first time in basically 3 years. So that'll be really fun.
Yeah, just to wrap things up, mine is very similar. Is just getting back to more travel. One of the interesting things about me is for a while I was, I called it fancy homeless, but basically I was nomading for a year and a half, lived out of a suitcase. And so I made a lot of friends around the world who I just haven't seen in a very long time. So looking forward to being able to travel again and see them.
Oh, very, very nice. Get my rescue dog up here. Neo is like, I think one of the days recently was like National Rescue Pet or something day. And so Neo's like a rescue pet. It's kind of interesting with him is like, yeah, I don't know what was going to happen to him, but they kind of were marketing Neo as a kind of escape bandit. So like really put off a lot of people from adopting him. And it's like he was able to escape onto a highway, and police had to go like rescue him. But I was like, hey, I'll give it like rescued or escape bandits kind of like scare the living crap out of me. But let me take a chance on Neo. And so here we are all these years later, still going strong. So one of the things that coming through the pandemic, a lot of people got pets or dogs or kind of any of the other stuff. And so if you're thinking about getting one, just, rescue pets are amazing. I can't imagine life without one. There's always complications. There's sites out there like Rover now where you can find like people that do like pet sitting. So you don't have to just stick to a border because those places are overwhelmed. But if you're thinking about adopting a pet, like dogs are amazing, and there's all the other types of animals. I probably wouldn't get like a lion or a tiger. Some of the other ones are like great white sharks. Those kind of are probably expensive, but just amazing what kind of, the pets and stuff like that. And just even with live shows, these guys are going like crazy, but just really great. Like, there's so many other stuff to do, connect back with your local tech scene, connect with events online and things like that. But it's really been a huge honor to have everybody on the community hour for this week. Just people I greatly look up to, love what all of you are doing as digital storytellers. So just some of the best that are out there, just really inspiring stuff. So keep up that amazing work, and probably for just on behalf of a lot of people, whether they're coming directly to tell you or not, is just thanks for inspiring all of us. in all these different ways, or giving people, if Mary Ann can do it, Jason can do it, Sean can do it, I understand that I can do it. They're giving me like ideas and inspiration, things like that. So thanks on behalf of everybody out there working in community developer relations. And just thanks for being on the show, and have a great rest of your May 5th, which is Cinco de Mayo. So whatever you want to do to celebrate, happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody out in the world. I wish I could think of some Spanish, habla español, but not in practice with it. But yeah, just thanks for being kind of on the front lines in a lot of different ways as professionals, as working in the space of community, and just you've got so much to offer so many people out there, and it's just so reassuring as we come out of the pandemic that there's people like you out there kind of as leaders and kind of helping to move all of us forward, and just the industries and all the lives that you're touching definitely are greatly benefiting from it. Mic drop. You're like, wow.
Great. Well said, Blake. Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, y'all have a great Cinco de Mayo, episode 6 of the Community Hour. We will be back next week on Thursday. So lots of exciting stuff coming up. But just thanks, Sean. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Mary Ann. We'll have links to the chat. We'll have clips, all that type of stuff. And just have a great rest of your May 5th, and see everybody.